My name's Katie Phillips. I am from Stratford-upon-Avon area originally, which is kind of near Birmingham. And yeah, I came to Lancaster because I was really interested in the sustainability element of it, because being a brand new cohort, they were able to really tailor the course to kind of more contemporary issues. And so sustainability is not every module that we do, and that really appealed to me, because I think in every building I do, I try and be really conscious of the impact that it's having, and that's really important to me. I've really enjoyed that sort of practice.
So is sustainability sort of something that directs your practice as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything I do, we've been taught everything we do should very much be centered around it, because if you're not thinking about the impact of your building in 50 years, then there's not really a lot of difference to what was done 50 years ago that's led to the damage that's being done now. So I think being really conscious is really important, and that's kind of the main focus, and that's what really drives a lot of my designs.
Are there any other influences or architectural movements or specific architects that really influence your work?
Yeah, I think I'm always really interested by natural forms. I think, for this project, I used bismuth crystal as a form generator, because I was just really interested in sort of the shapes that the kind of nature provides. And last year, I had a hexagonal design that was based off efficiency, but centered around a beehive. So that was kind of where my project came from last year. So I think nature is a big inspiration for me. I think in terms of architectural movements, I love old architecture. We went on a trip to Greece with the architecture school in January, and seeing the Acropolis and all the old architecture there was just fantastic, and just the scale of it all was insane.
So are there any specific themes or patterns that manifest in your designs? Is it the organic shape that you've talked about that needs to fit with nature?
I think in terms of organic shapes, it doesn't always have to be curves, because I think that's quite a common conception, is architects working with curves and it's really awkward. But I think there's a lot more than just that to be taken from nature. It's sort of how it interacts with the context as well. So I haven't just taken my building and just put it on a random site that we've been given. I've thought very much about how it's going to interact with the landscape, how I can alter the landscape around it to kind of make it reflect the building, and sort of integrating it into the landscape so it's sort of more cohesive with everything, and it can actually have benefits to the landscape as well, as opposed to just sort of coexisting. It can increase biodiversity, it can make the site more kind of useful or have more direction to it. So it's not just about what's inside the building, it's very much about how it impacts the context and the surrounding environment.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us about the project that you specifically mentioned earlier, and how you had to study the area?
Yeah, we were given the site of Felfoot National Trust Park at the base of Windermere. It's in the Lake District, which is a UNESCO heritage area. So that was initially immediately some really big constraints that we had to think about in terms of being sensitive to the outstanding natural beauty of the area. Because I'm looking at sustainable tourism and the impact. I'm not only telling people about the impact that they can have, but I really want to educate them, because the brief is to create a learning centre, and you can do that pretty much based on anything you want. So that was my kind of wider scheme. And then again, I talked about the bismuth crystal. It's mined in the lakes. It is, and the lakes does have a mining history. So again, bringing the context back into the project is really important, and linking it with the surroundings.
So it all kind of started from that little thing?
Yeah, so that was my form generator. And I mean, even I could take a photo of this and I could draw a little person in it, and I could immediately just see a whole space around them. So it could be an auditorium, or it could be a stepped ceiling, or you could almost feel you're underground and inside it. So that was really an interesting thing for me. And I liked that it had the link to the lakes as well. It just made it a bit more relevant to the project. But yeah, then from there, we also had to retrofit 2 boathouses on site. They're 2 listed buildings. One's a listed building, one's within it's called the curtilage of the building, so it's kind of affected by this listing and it can't be altered too much. So again, as part of the course, you have to show that you're really sensitive to what already exists. A massive part of architecture is about conservation work, and not just building your own building because you're inspired by crystal. So we had to retrofit the boathouses and add insulation and kind of link that all into the massive scheme of things. But then site analysis of the site kind of said, oh, right, there was this old villa that used to be on the lawn. It was like a massive mansion that was knocked down, and since then the site has been donated to National Trust, and that kind of drove putting the building on the site where it is where the old villa is, because the one, that's a proven site to work. It's already got quite a nice sort of area. It's quite flat. But again, it's quite a good point for like you can add circulation back to the site and bring it to life a bit more, because at the moment you can kind of wander around it and it's absolutely lovely, but I think just adding a bit more direction will really improve the use of it. So thinking about that, and then it was just a kind of iterative process of like a ton of sketching. I love hand sketching. I sketched the crystal out and used that as an initial form generator, and then I tried like making a plan out of it, so just drawing kind of rough lines of where a room might be, where stairs might be, maybe this could be an auditorium, so just kind of sketches like that. And then I had a look at like the interlocking squares, so again like picked apart what made up the crystal, and kind of played around with that myself and kind of tailored it to the site, to the shape of the site, and trying to fit it on the lawn and seeing how it interacted with the trees and everything, because there's some trees that have root protection orders that you can't take them down. So being kind of mindful of that and having all the views, because there's a beautiful view at Lake Windermere, so I wanted to capitalise on that if I could. And yeah, the sketches turned into models to try and make it more 3D and understand the different dimensions. That was just sort of trying to explore how it might go together, and where the structure might sit, because using timber as a frame is a really good option in terms of sustainability, because it's carbon neutral. You cut down the tree, but then you can reuse it again, and you can use dry jointing in the structure, which means that once the building has lived its life, you can take it apart and you can use this beam in another building. You could use this column somewhere else, or you could cut it up in smaller pieces. So reuse has been a massive part of the project. That was one of our specifications, was that we had to design it for either disassembly or reuse. So I've kind of done mine for a bit of both. From the inside, you can really kind of see the atmosphere of like why I've done the stepped roof, because it's like really cool and it lets in the light at certain times of day. And again, how like the different spaces interact. So this is an upstairs area, not finished, but I'll add cladding in. So I'll have like planks on the wall that kind of integrate into a stone veneer panel thing, because it's all part of trying to make you feel like you're inside the crystal again, of just having a really dynamic feeling inside it. But
yeah, I can definitely see the influence, and lots of corners and rectangles, which is a bit contradictory to nature, and I like that. Do you think it's like gonna become sort of your trademark in your design, or?
Maybe. Well, I didn't actually notice it until about 2 weeks ago, when my tutor mentioned that like my project last year was using hexagons, and like that's quite a sort of geode shape as well, and I didn't notice or make the connection that I was doing that. But I think I am very much inspired by natural forms in terms of initial idea generation, but then I'll take that on and I won't feel constrained by them too much, because that could limit the design. But yeah, I think taking inspiration from nature is definitely something that drives all of my work.
So it is a bit of a restriction now, because did you imagine you would have to deal with this going into the course?
Going into the course, I'm not sure I knew exactly what architecture involved, to be honest, aside from like you draw a building, you design a building. But I was really curious, and that was part of the reason that I chose it, was because I wanted to learn more and sort of learn more about it.